It was Parsons, a devotee of English magician Aleister Crowley, who would later declare himself the Antichrist after a stormy relationship with the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. Parsons was accused of giving secret technology to the Israelis, among other felonies, and at one time worked for the Howard Hughes empire. He died quite prematurely from an explosion at his home, either an accident or suicide or murder. None of the sources seem to agree. For all that, a crater on the dark side of the moon was named after him in recognition of his accomplishments for the space program and his contribution in creating what would eventually become the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at Caltech. Again, from Sinister Forces, A Grimoire of American Political Witchcraft, Book 1, The Nine, by Peter Levenda. Can't recommend those books enough. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. Now, I want to talk about the underwear bomber guy, okay? And everything that I hear in relation to this, let's just assume for the sake of argument that this guy really was a terrorist trying to blow up a plane, okay, and not some ridiculous fucking patsy that somebody put up to it, okay, as a deliberate false flag action, okay. Everything I hear in the news and everywhere that talks about this guy in the mainstream sort of sense, everything that they talk about is how we can create more fucking rules and more fucking laws, and more fucking shit that you have to go through when you fly a plane. Now here's a guy who's on a plane from Europe to the fucking United States and he doesn't even have a fucking passport? Give me a break! Now, all of the things that are wrong with this situation, he was tattled on by his own fucking dad to the authorities who didn't do anything about it. He was already known to have gone to Yemen, the so-called new terrible source of terrorism. He didn't have a fucking passport, and I don't think he had any luggage either. Now, all the pundits want to talk about is how can we make security more tight? How can we improve security? How can we make people go through more fucking hell to fly a fucking plane because of this? This goes back to the same fucking thing on 9/11. If the people in authority wanted to do something to actually help the fucking situation, they would not be talking about adding on more fucking laws and making you go through ridiculous fucking screening processes. Instead, they would look at where the fucking breakdown occurred, fire the fucker who did not do his fucking job, and make sure the job is done in the future. But that is not the way of things. Do you want to know why? Because everything is driven by a fucking agenda. And everything that happens is used to further that agenda. So, if their agenda is a fucking police state, then every single action is used to perpetrate that. That's why you got the Patriot Act. Never mind that the FBI already knew about all of these fuckers. Let's just assume that the terrorists they say did it on 9/11, just for the sake of argument. They already knew about this. They wanted to investigate. They wanted to do something about it. But it was all just pushed aside. Why? Because there's an agenda behind it. The agenda is for a police state. A total totalitarian police state that pries into every nook and fucking cranny of your life. And if you want to fly, God forbid, you should want to fly because they're going to want to jam shit up your ass the next time you go on a plane instead of fixing the fucking problem. Because there are more than enough safeguards in place now that would prevent this from happening if the fucking actions necessary were taken. And that same thing goes for 9/11 and for any of these other things that happen. So if I hear one more asshole talking about how we need to have fucking full body scanners and everything else to try to stop this from happening in the future, I'm going to fucking puke! Now I wanted to talk a little bit more about this idea of an agenda. You know, there's some controversy about cell phones. Do they cause brain tumors or don't they? Well, the cell phone industry does the studies. And they all say there's no link to brain tumors or brain cancer. Well, then that should settle it, right? There's no oversight over any of that, but they wouldn't lie to us, would they? You're fucking right they would, because it serves their fucking purpose. The same thing happened with the tobacco industry when they were doing all of the studies themselves. Tobacco, it doesn't cause cancer. What are you talking about? Look at all these studies we've done. You see, when you let an agenda drive whatever it is, then it's not getting to the root of the problem, and it is in fact hiding the fucking problem. And that can also be applied to anthropogenic climate change, also known as global warming or AGW. Because a lot of the information that's used to determine this is regarded as proprietary, and it is not shared with the vast scientific community. The funding that goes into this comes from foundations and through the United Nations and the IPCC, which in its very name has a fucking agenda. So do you think that all the science that they fund is not going to have an agenda behind it? There's always an agenda. If you find out what the agenda is, then you can do something to combat it, instead of looking at the surface realities. And just one more note on this. For people who do not get the concept of the elites who are running things, and the fact that they have an agenda that includes eugenics and depopulation and all of the other horrors that you hear about from me and others, all you have to do is read their own fucking works, and it's spelled out for you. Look back to the Milner Group, the Round Table, the Club of Rome, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the CFR. All of these groups are interlinked, and they all stem from the same fucking source. And all of the people who sit on their boards and run them are all elitists, and they all think they're better than you and me. They deserve to live. You deserve to fucking die. And all these agendas are about control. Control and power. Because when you're fucking rich as Midas, you don't need any more money. So even if you have a carbon trading scheme that's going to make hundreds of billions of dollars for somebody, that's secondary to the fucking control that they're going to have over your life. That's why it's incredibly important to try and stop it as soon as you possibly can. Because as it continues to roll forward, it gains steam, it gains momentum, and it's more difficult to stop. Once they put a control in place, it's very difficult to have it removed. Just think about taxes. Every time a new tax comes along, do they ever fucking get rid of it? Even if it's for a special fucking purpose? No! And it's the same thing with agendas. So seek out the fucking agenda behind the facts, and you'll know exactly what to do to try to combat it. Thank you.